Before we get into this episode, there's something that might be of interest that I wanted to tell you about. Scene and Heard, who run this podcast, have been asked by Scotland Food and Drink to undertake a strategic review of the Scotland Food and Drink Excellence Awards. Now, these Excellence Awards have been going for almost 20 years and are a huge mainstay of the food and drink sector. But it's time to ensure that they're still relevant. So if you have ever been involved in the Scotland Food and Drink Excellence Awards, or even if you've ever had an opinion about them, we would love for you, please, to complete our survey. So if you go to the On Farm Twitter, which is at @on_farm UK, and click the link in the bio, there will be a tab in there that will take you to the survey, and it should only take you a very short while to complete, but we would be enormously grateful. Hello and welcome to the latest edition of On Farm Helps. These episodes are a bit different to the usual. We're focusing primarily on offering timely and expert advice to rural businesses across Scotland to help them navigate these tough times of coronavirus. So we're wanting to enable them to thrive and survive in these difficult times. Please do get in touch if you can think of anything that you'd like us to focus on in future. So just tweet us on @on_farm UK. For this episode, I have been joined by Gail Ellis. I've known Gail for a number of years and she's provided some very valuable advice and support to me. She is an expert in HR and people management, working for her business called Greenburn. Greenburn provide HR support for the likes of NFU Scotland, Scottish Land and Estates, Scotland Food and Drink. So they really know what they're talking about when it comes to people management, and particularly in times like this. So Gail and I had a really wide-ranging chat about everything that's happening in the workplace as a result of the coronavirus lockdown, from furlough to workers' rights, holiday entitlement, sick pay, you name it, we pretty much discussed it. Gail and I were chatting from our own separate offices under lockdown, so the quality may not be quite as good as you're used to, but please bear with us. The key here, I think, is to get the knowledge and information out there to people who need it. So we started our chat with Gail giving us a bit of background about Greenburn and the kind of services that they offer to a wide range of businesses throughout the rural and food and drink sectors.
Greenburn is an independent HR company, quite small, but we are all specialists on our own field, and we give expert advice and opinion to our clients. And we had a huge range of clients from very, very large organisations to tiny ones, and we work on the basis that we provide solutions. So we're very proactive, and hopefully get to know our clients and their business as well.
Absolutely. Now, at the time of recording and broadcasting this particular episode of On Farm Helps, we are just coming to the end of week 3 of lockdown, and I understand that your phones have been going a little bit crazy over the last 3 weeks. Would that be true to say?
Yes, phones and emails, and I thought it would just be for the first week or so, but it's just continuing as more and more questions keep popping up. You know, the legislation was changed, the Chancellor changed it a little bit on the 4th, so that created a new raft of questions. And it's confusing for people, and it's a scary time. So we'll do as much as we can to help with the knowledge that we have.
Absolutely. And there are many different questions that have come your way with regard to holiday entitlement and management, performance reviews and performance management, absence and sickness, obviously irrelevant at the moment. But we'll maybe kick off, because you've sent me a list of sort of questions that you frequently get asked. We maybe kick off, if that's okay, with furlough, because I think looking at the questions that you've sent me, that's been an area that's generated maybe the most queries. And I know you've got some kind of examples of the questions that people have come up with, and a whole range. So perhaps in your words, can you tell us what you think has been kind of the biggest query with regard to the furlough scheme?
Yes, I think with the furlough scheme, it's who can be furloughed and who can't be furloughed. And it wasn't terribly clear in the beginning. People thought if their jobs were at risk. And it was really because if a business didn't have a need for people, so hospitality industry is a classic example, all the cafes and restaurants closing, and what do you do with all those workers? So they could all be furloughed. But as the time's gone on, more and more issues have come up. And so now the Chancellor on the 4th of April clarified the furlough a little bit further. And so furlough now extends to anybody that there isn't any work for. If the work has stopped or the operations have slowed down, then staff can be furloughed. Only though if they've been on the payroll since the 28th of February. It's an important thing, this, because somebody phoned yesterday and said to me, he said, I've taken somebody on the 3rd of March, he said, and I'm going to backdate it so that they can be furloughed. So I said, how are you going to manage that? And he said, well, I'm just going to put them on the payroll. But I don't think he fully understood that they need to have gone through the PAYE system first so that the revenue has registered them. So an important point. I think I ruined his day, actually.
Oh dear. At least you kept him legal.
I know. So it's staff who basically there isn't any work for, but also now the furlough's been extended to anybody that is a carer, or if you have somebody has children and they have got real problems with childcare, they can't work from home, and so it's been extended that they can ask to be furloughed as well. Now you can ask to be furloughed, and a lot of people have come to us saying, I've asked to be furloughed but it's been declined, and it's got to be something that's done by mutual agreement. For instance, if you have a very specific skill and your director manager needs you to be available, they can say that they won't furlough you. But I think it's a compromise. It seems to be working well, and the fact that the restrictions have been slackened a little bit for people that are shielding, people that are carers, people that have got children at home and they can't work, I think it's made it a lot easier for everybody.
You did touch on something there that, with regard to childcare, and I think many people listening will, aside from having a greater level of respect for teachers, will now be realising how difficult it is to juggle work in many cases and looking after children, especially if they're small. I know my two are in the other room watching a mermaid video at the moment just to try and keep them quiet while I work. It is challenging. Am I right in saying then that once a member of staff has been furloughed, they can no longer undertake any work for that business during that period?
Yes, yesterday we had a call from a gentleman who'd been furloughed since the 1st of March, and his boss called him yesterday morning and asked him if he would volunteer to go in to do training of one of the other members of staff who was actually not furloughed. And that's really is a bit of a chancer, obviously, because you're not allowed to do work at all for your existing company. Interesting, you can work for somebody else. So, for example, if you were furloughed, you could take a job driving one of the delivery vans for one of the major supermarkets, providing it isn't in contradiction of your current terms of your contract and that you get the approval of your business owner or manager. But you definitely can't work for your existing company anymore.
That's very useful to know, actually. And I suppose in the farming sector, a lot of in particular soft fruit companies are going to be crying out for labour when it comes picking time, because they're not able to have access to a lot of the labour that comes in from elsewhere in Europe. So there is potentially an opportunity for people who've been furloughed to go and pick soft fruits as the season comes round.
Oh, I think it's a great opportunity, to be honest. And I know some soft fruit farmers are already actually targeting people who've been furloughed, but it's a wonderful opportunity because they're really helping, and I think that's what everybody wants to do. We've had lots of questions from people who have been furloughed saying, I want to help, can I volunteer? And yes, they can volunteer and they can go and work somewhere else. So I think that's probably where this land army is going to come from, all the staff throughout the whole of the UK that have been furloughed, which would be fantastic. fantastic, wouldn't it?
Absolutely. And in fact, Monty, who's my business partner, very unfortunately has suffered an injury to his arm. And he's in the midst of lambing at the moment on the farm. He was saying that actually, in a sense, and you wouldn't wish this on anybody, but in a sense, it's fortunate that it's happened this year because he's got relatives who've been furloughed who can come to the farm and help him out with lambing, and he gets the assistance he might not have had in any other year. There are opportunities out there for people to do something else and keep themselves busy, I suppose.
Yeah, it's interesting because I read, I think in one of the newspapers the other day, how an EasyJet pilot that had been furloughed had actually taken a job driving the delivery van in Tesco's. It's amazing how many people I know now that have been furloughed that are actually taking jobs. I know a lady that's taken a job in a care home, and others that are just stacking shelves in Marks and Spencer's and Morrison's or wherever. So I think everybody's pulling together. But the fact that people can't take another job in furlough, I think is really important. If you have 2 or even 3 jobs, you can also be furloughed from all of them. So if you had the childcare problem, or you were shielding somebody who was at risk, and you did have 2 or 3 different jobs, which many people do, each job can furlough you.
I was actually having a conversation yesterday with somebody from Scottish Enterprise, and we were talking in I suppose, general terms about people who can taking the opportunity of lockdown to upskill themselves and do some training. So if you've been furloughed, are you able to undertake training that is relevant to your job whilst you're furloughed?
Yes. I mean, and that, I think that's being promoted quite heavily because it does seem an ideal opportunity. The only thing is, training is almost classed as working if you're only being paid the 80% as opposed to the 100%, because furlough attracts 80% of your salary, and the employer can lift it to 100% if they choose to or can afford to. I think it's really more prevalent. But you've got to just make sure that if people are training, some people don't fall below the minimum wage. But again, we've had queries about this. A couple of people have said, we're going on a training course. It lasts for a week. It's a whole week where I have to do an online training course. Do I still get paid? So you still get your furlough, but in both cases, the people were paid. The 80% meant their salary reduced to such a point that they weren't earning the minimum wage for the hour. So the employer then agreed just to uplift the furlough to 100% for the period that they were training.
I see. Yes, that makes sense. When you're on furlough, are you also accruing annual leave at the same time? And how does that work?
Yes. You continue to accrue annual leave while you're on furlough, or if you're working from home. I think the whole leave situation is going to be quite challenging. The Chancellor's now said that 20 days leave can be extended to be taken over a 2-year period for everybody, because he realises that this is going to impact on businesses quite significantly. So there's 2 things. If you're working from home, it's really a good idea. You're still working. It's a good idea to still take some holiday. If you're furloughing, your business can ask you to take holiday as well. What they don't want to do, and a lot of businesses are really worried about this, is when they do get operational again, they're quite concerned about the backlog of holiday that's going to come forward. We've got one client who thinks that from September they'll be incredibly busy, and so they're asking all their staff to take 70% of their holiday before September, so right between now and over the sort of summer period, which has proved a little challenging because some people see holiday as going away to the beach. But for operational reasons, now the Chancellor's extended it so people can take the holiday forward, but it's still causing concern for businesses because it means potentially on top of their normal statutory requirement or their company holiday scheme, people potentially are carrying another 20 days forward for 2 years. So it's going to take some working out and a bit of manpower planning, I think, for all businesses to be on top of this.
And so if as an employer you ask one of your employees to take holiday during this period, presumably that employee must comply, must they?
If you want the employee to take 5 days holiday, you have to give them 10 days notice, so double the amount of time that they would be off. To be frank, it's one of those things that can be a little bit emotive, so it's always better to come to some sort of sensible agreement. The extending it over 2 years, I think, should ease any tension. I know from talking to people that have phoned, a lot of people that don't want to take holiday during furlough. They don't want to take holiday while they're working from home. But the employer still has a duty of care to make sure that people are getting rest, they are moving away, and it's quite stressful for everybody. So I think it's a balance. As always, there should be a meeting in the middle somewhere.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose in most cases that's perfectly possible. And you can always assist with the smooth running if there's not an agreement that's kind of coming up straight away, I suppose.
I can try oiling the wheels, I think we call it.
Absolutely. It's tiring if you're working from home and trying to look after children or other relatives. It is tiring. So you need a holiday, not a dissimilar way to the fact needing a holiday under normal circumstances. So I think that's maybe what people don't realise until they've got into that situation of working from home for a while, and to appreciate that maybe.
It's certainly proving quite challenging. I think we've heard more from managers, let's say, who are trying to manage people who are working from home, and it is difficult because I think we just have to, the circumstances are so unique. I mean, they're unprecedented, aren't they, that I think really you all have to sort of take just a little step back and not get too upset if people don't deliver the level of work they would deliver in the office. I think there's got to be a little bit of relaxation all the way around, because there are, and we know of examples of people that are working from home in a bedroom on the corner of a bed almost, and 3 young children around. So that's hard. I mean, that's really hard. And they don't want to be furloughed. They want to continue working because obviously they want to continue earning. So I think it's about respect. I think it's now not the hours that you work anymore. I don't think it's about being there 9 to 5. I think it's, what do you have to do that day or that week? And then you do that, but whenever it suits you around your lifestyle at home. I think that's the way we're sort of moving. And I think that we're probably after this, the workplace won't be quite the same again.
No, I agree. And in fact, I've been trying to operate for many years on a kind of quality over quantity kind of basis when it comes to work. And hopefully I managed to achieve that. But it's true. It's about fitting things around your other obligations that you've got to do. And as in the situation you've been describing, it's got to be about two-way understanding. Managers have got to understand the various balls that everybody else is juggling, and those people juggling the balls have got to understand that the managers have got a business to run. And so if there's two-way understanding, then it becomes easier, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think communication in this situation is absolutely key for both parties, really keeping in touch with not only managers, but colleagues, having team meetings, having coffee chats, because everybody's in it together and you can very, very quickly feel isolated. I know one of my colleagues has had 2 or 3 calls about people that are feeling really quite lonely, quite left out of things, and so I think it should be cognizant of all of us. If we haven't heard from somebody for a few days, are they okay? Just give them a call, have a chat. How's it going? The pressures will come, and I suspect the pressures of caring, having children at home, trying to work without actually the things that you're used to being around you. It's amazing in an office you've got all your stuff around you and it's not quite the same. So I think it will I think going forward it will settle down, but I think we're starting to see already, just from the calls and emails we're getting, concerns about, I can't do this, I'm not happy, I can't get anything done. So again, we just, as all of us, just need to be more cognizant of other people and the way they're feeling and thinking.
Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, we may well look at doing another episode about working from home and the challenges that brings, and trying to juggle all of the different things that we're all trying to look after. Now, obviously, in most situations, this two-way communication will solve problems. But if there are any employers out there who, despite having an understanding for what their employees are dealing with, still do have any issues over performance, what can they do to try and tackle that?
Yeah, we've had a few people coming forward and saying that they've got members of staff that have been underperforming for some time, and now they're working from home. The situation's got worse. And what we're really saying to that is continue with the performance management systems that you've got in place. Don't overreact. People are in very different situations. They probably find it even harder working from home, but contact and helping people go through this. So you've got somebody who's underperforming. It's important to stay in touch with them. It's important to just touch base with them every day, not checking up. How are they doing? Do they need any help? Do they need support? Can another colleague be brought in to coach them or to help them, assist them? Is it a training thing? And then just go along. And it might get to the point where we're seeing a bit of a tendency where people can't seem to organise their day very well at home. It's actually, what do they do first? So I think in some cases managers can help performance when they can help somebody prioritise what they've got to do and go a little bit more into task as opposed to the bigger input, because just helping somebody to say, actually, do you reckon you could get these 2 or 3 things done by, close of play today or by first thing tomorrow morning? I think it gives people direction and a target, and I think then they'll achieve it. But with performance issues, we don't think it's a time to be draconian. I think it's just helping people through this situation going till we get out the other side, whenever that may be.
Yes, absolutely. We actually, surprisingly, maybe haven't yet touched on the issue of what happens if an employee is actually unwell with suspected or confirmed coronavirus. So, as an example, I know you sent me earlier on that if an employee feels unwell, coughing, temperature, hasn't been confirmed as having coronavirus, but they suspect that they do, how does that work in terms of ordinary sick pay and that kind of scheme of things? So
if you have somebody who, again, this has come up a few times, if you have somebody that's suddenly starting to feel unwell, they don't know if they've got the virus or not. But I think for this, just what you do is ask them to basically they'll go on to statutory sick pay or company sick pay, whichever one you've got, for the first 7 days to see if it gets any worse. Hopefully by then they're either, whatever it is, they're either getting over it, if it's just a little bug, or if it's worse, they just carry on company sick pay. We've been asked several times, can we furlough our staff who are ill? And the answer is no. It's either statutory sick pay or company sick pay because they're genuinely ill. And lots of questions about people just not feeling well. And I think the best thing to do is just say, OK, you'll go into sick pay for a week and let's reassess it after that.
And what happens if somebody isn't actually sick themselves, but they're self-isolating because a family member is sick?
Yeah, then we would call that shielding. So with shielding, you can furlough somebody, you can furlough a person, and it's probably the best thing to do because in the instances we've heard of this, it's another member of the family that is really quite sick, and in some cases they have actually got coronavirus. Or it's shielding older people who are at risk, they're very at-risk category. So you can furlough somebody because, again, what we've found is people that have somebody in their household that is sick, they really don't want to go out and try run the risk of passing this on, and they don't want to endanger the person in the household either. So you can furlough in that case.
I see. And there'll probably be people listening with employees who are either, for example, pregnant or have other underlying health issues. So what are the options as an employer if you've got, let's say, for example, somebody who's 8 months pregnant who works for you?
Well, the first thing, obviously, you would hope that the lady is working from home and maybe actually looking to reduce hours. Look to maybe reduce hours and, if possible, bring forward the date that she would go on to her natural leave.
Yeah, that makes sense. Gosh, we've covered quite a lot, Gail. But is there anything that springs to mind that you think we haven't covered and that employers or indeed employees out there listening may be thinking, oh gosh, I'm still a bit unsure about X or Y or Z?
One thing that we have been asked a lot is about directors. Can directors be furloughed? It was a little unclear. It was a little unclear until just a couple of weeks ago. But directors can be furloughed, but it's very, very important that they don't do any work in or on the business. So, for example, we had a director come forward and said, I work on business development and I need to go on furlough because, I can't afford not to go on to furlough, but I need to keep working because obviously I'm working on the business, not in the business. I want to keep looking for new leads, new business. But the guidance is very clear. The only work that a director can do is to do with statutory requirements. So if you had to do something with Companies House, otherwise they cannot do any work at all. So it's a difficult decision for directors, but the guidance is very, very clear. They cannot do any work either on the business or in the business during the furlough period.
I think that will actually be very relevant to probably a lot of our listeners who will be directors of small, medium-sized or indeed large companies. And in fact, it's relevant for me as well. I can't afford to furlough in a sense, because if I were to have, say, 3 months of not doing any business development, there might not be a business for me to come back to. So I can't furlough because I need to keep going to keep the business moving as much as possible. And so that, I think, there'll be many people in a similar situation to me that for whom that question and answer is very, very relevant indeed.
I think it's really important, and it's going to cause quite a dilemma, I think, for a lot of people. Something else we've been asked quite a bit is, hypothetically, you've got a team of 6 people, there's only enough work for 2 or 3, so what do? You can furlough some and not others. So you can furlough people for a minimum of 3 weeks. So what some companies are doing now, they're rotating the staff. Some are on furlough, some are working from home, and then after 3 weeks they're going to switch so that everybody gets the opportunity to do furlough and maybe some voluntary work and work at the same time. And that's quite a good solution. You can do that, but you have to go onto a furlough for a minimum of 3 weeks.
Oh, I see. I didn't know that. And I suppose one final question that maybe any employees out there listening will be thinking, presumably furlough does not have any long-term impact on the security of that job. You know, if you ask to furlough or you are furloughed, there's no implication there that your job is any less important than anybody else's, and it's just as secure when you go back as it was when you started in that sense.
I think that's correct. I mean, the whole reason behind furlough is to take the burden of the salaries, paying salaries away from the employer, so that actually they can, when the furlough finishes and when this situation resolves, people can go back to their jobs and the jobs are still there. It's actually a way of trying to secure jobs for the future. One thing that employers do ask is, when are we going to get the money for the furlough? So the HMRC scheme has not yet opened the portals where you can actually record who's gone on to furlough and put your information in. That's not going to open until about the end of April. And then no doubt, goodness, how many squillions of people are going to be trying to access it to enter information. But the last news we had was the revenue will not be able to reimburse the furlough payments. And the furlough payments are the 80% of salary, the employer's NI, which is 13.8%, and 3% of the statutory pension. They don't think they'll be able to reimburse that money until May, end of May. So a lot of employers are struggling at the moment because they can't afford to pay the salaries today and wait to the end of May. So there are these business loans available, but
to help with cash flow.
Yeah, cash flow's challenging for a lot of people. So again, and some employers are having to come to arrangements with people to do reduced hours. So reduced hours doesn't mean you're being furloughed. It just means that you might be reduced to 4 hours a day as opposed to 8 hours a day or 7 hours a day, and it reduces your salary for a period of time because they do need you to keep working, but they just can't afford to pay. So it's flexibility on both sides, to be honest, Anna. It's needed from everybody.
Absolutely. And I think that's the overall message that's coming through from talking to you, is that yes, there are rules and regulations and laws, but actually two-way communication, negotiation, and being open to have fair discussions on both sides is going to be what kind of really brings people through the other side of this.
Yeah, people make businesses. I think people make businesses, and it's just by working together you can make a business successful. Now more than ever, we all need to be doing that. You know, the employers have got challenges, the employees have got challenges, so it's meeting in the middle. And I think actually businesses should come out stronger the other side of this.
I hope so, and I think that we're seeing a lot of silver linings on a lot of clouds with people who are innovating and doing things different, which we've kind of touched on in other podcast episodes. But it's definitely people are finding new ways of doing things, and in many ways that may set us in good stead for the future.
Yeah, we've just got to build on. We've got to build on all that, and everything I see in here is, you know, how many times before this happened I had managers saying, "Oh, we can't possibly work from home. They can't do that from home. It won't work." And all of a sudden, almost overnight, everybody's working from home, and in the main, it is actually working. It's just the occasional manager that might say they're supposed to be at their desk from 9 o'clock and they weren't there at 10 o'clock. And I think it's now about it. It's just about it's quality, not quantity. So I think that's a really good lesson.
Oh, well, thank you, Gail. Just finally, we've gone into a bit of detail here on some topics, but there could be people out there who are thinking to themselves, gosh, I actually could do a phone conversation with Gail to get some specific information on my case. So how can people get in touch with you if they need to get some advice?
Well, we've got our website, which is www.greenburn.co.uk, email gail@greenburn.co.uk, and all our contact details and phone numbers, and then we'll give you so that you can put them on. But we're happy and we take calls. We work for 4 large membership organisations: Scottish Land and Estates, National Farmers Union of Scotland, SAOS, and Scotland Food and Drink, and all their members have free access to us and can call us with any questions or problems or issues they've got. And during this period, the phone call's free, any emails we have to do is all free, because we're just trying to support everybody as much as we can. So we extend that to anybody that's got a question, and normally we've got 2 people on phones all the time. We can answer the question fairly quickly there and then.
Thank you very much for listening to that latest episode of On Farm Helps. You now know how to contact Gail if you need her specific advice in relation to your business. And please do get in touch with us if you've got any feedback. You can find us on Twitter and all other types of social media just by searching On Farm Podcasts. And we'll speak to you next time. Thank you.